Good morning. This is an introductory study of Hegel's Science of Nature. Today, we're taking up the third and final division of this science, organics. Now, keep in mind that in the science of nature, we are overcoming nature, self-externality, matter, or simply the outer, so that spirit, consciousness, thought, the inner, will prove to be the sole absolute truth of everything. Briefly, and to review, we began in mechanics with space, sheer externality, and objectivity. Then we advanced logically to matter in motion and universal gravitation, which resulted in the solar system, which exhibited the four moments of the concept. Then in physics, we saw matter or body taking on qualities, for example, as the four elements, specific gravity, cohesion, sound, and shape. And finally, in total individuality, as shape, magnetism, electricity, in the chemical process where individuality attained its highest form. And now, in organics, we will finally have full individuality as subjectivity and nature's highest actualization of the idea and the concept. Note that for our purposes, the idea and the concept will mean the same thing. But in truth, there is a difference. Briefly, 1, as we have said, the concept is all and all that exists. This is logical thought. 2, but due to polarity, there must also be an object, nature, non-thought. 3, therefore, the concept, since it alone is real, must overcome or idealize the object, i.e., remove its otherness and make it into itself, first as life and then as spirit. Hegel calls this overcome object or concept-object unity the idea. Thus, whenever the concept and the object or reality, i.e. the body, correspond, we have the idea. It will be helpful if we first take a closer look at the transition from physics to organics and indicate the difference of the idea or concept qua chemical process and qua life. First, what Hegel calls the idea or concept is just a unity in diversity or a many in one. This is what must be firmly held in mind. And it is very simple to grasp. In the chemical process, we had two bodies which acted upon each other and had as result one body, their neutral product, in which all the properties or qualities of the two bodies vanished or were idealized. This phenomenon, the reduction of diversity and plurality to unity, which defines the idea, is exactly what happens in life, in the animal organism, where we have a plurality of distinct organs and systems which negate and idealize themselves as independent and return into the unity of the one soul or self. Indeed, when you yourself are in perfect health, you are one and oblivious to the multitude of physiological systems and cells that comprise your body. The key difference is that in the life process, the movement from many to one is self-initiated and self-maintained, while in the chemical process, the movement is other-initiated or caused by an external agency. For example, to get rid of acid reflux, you must swallow the Pepto-Bismol. Now, organics is divided into the geological or terrestrial organism, the earth, the universal, the plant or vegetable organism, the particular, and the animal organism, the individual. So we start with the geological organism, which is not really an organism, but the presupposition of the organism. As Hegel says, it is the corpse or skeleton of the life process, which first begins to manifest in the plant organism, or formal subject, and then perfectly in the animal organism, or concrete subject, where there is a perfect correspondence of reality, the body organism, with the concept and its three UPI moments. It is important to note that the subject, subjectivity, or the soul, only exists as a return into itself from the object. So in order to have the subject, life, the soul, we must begin with the object, with what is other than life. And this is the corpse of life, or the geological organism, i.e., the mineral earth, as opposed to the vegetable and animal earth. So, we begin with the geological organism, or object, the condition for life and subjectivity, then advance to the first subject, the plant or vegetable organism, which is only a formal subject, and then to the second and last subject, the animal organism, the true and concrete subject. And then we transition to spirit and the absolute subject. Now, the geological organism is divided into the history, structure, and life of the earth. We will focus here only on three of Hegel's noteworthy positions. 1. Hegel holds that, quote, the earth and the sun are eternal. They had no beginning in time. And this is true because the concept and its three UPI moments, inclusive of nature, is eternal. As Hegel says, quote, the earth is created and preserved through the absolute process of the idea. But the creation is eternal. It is not an event which once happened, as our scientists believe today. It is an eternal generation. And, quote, the sun, as a self-luminous body, is the primordial uncreated light, which does not arise from the conditions of finite existence, but immediately is. Hence, the sun is eternal. 2. Hegel holds that the earth is the spiritual center of the universe, the only place where life, qua intelligence, exists, excluding the astral realm, of course. And this is true because there is only one concept and one act or theater of its self-actualization, which is the earth and human or Jedi history. As Hegel says, quote, the planet, the earth, is the veritable prius, the subject, where life first has a real existence. The sun is the servant of the earth, and sun, moon, comets, and stars are mere conditions of the earth. The sun, therefore, has not produced a planet nor thrown it off. On the contrary, the whole solar system exists together. If there is a question of pride or of place, we must give the place of honor to the earth we live on. The earth is our physical home and the home of spirit too. End quote. 3. Hegel also holds that evolution is not true. As Hegel says, quote, "A thinking consideration must reject such nebulous, at bottom sensuous ideas as the so-called origination of plants and animals from water and the origination of the more highly developed animal organisms from the lower. Indeed, the concept, timelessly and in a universal manner, posits all particularity in existence. It is a completely empty thought to represent species as developing successively, one after the other in time. And the mosaic story of creation," says Hegel, "is still the best in its quite naive statement that on this day plants came into being, on another day the animals, and on another day man. Man has not developed himself out of the animal, nor the animal out of the plant. Each is, at a single stroke, what it is, as Aristotle also holds." End quote. Oh, and note that even Darwin himself acknowledges that, quote, this is from The Origin of Species, "If numerous species belonging to the same genera or families have really started into life at once, this fact would be fatal to the theory of evolution through natural selection." End quote. The Origin of Species, incidentally, fails to explain the origin of a single species. Now, the fact is, which all scientists acknowledge, that the fossil record shows no evidence of species or progenitors prior to the Cambrian explosion. Even eminent evolutionist Stephen Jay Gould himself notes, quote, "The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference or wishful thinking, not the evidence of fossils. We cannot demonstrate evolution by recording gradual change. All the intermediate stages are missing. The fossil record does not support evolution." End quote. Of course, how we got here, by chance, by divine providence, via atheistic or theistic evolution, is not ultimately important. What alone is important is, now that we're here, who or what are we? And the answer is, according to all the evidence presented in this course, we are immortal Jedi, i.e., being the force, the universe, aware of itself. Now, as concerns the plant or vegetable organism, we will focus on 3 things. First, that the plant organism is essentially an anticipation, an analog of the animal organism, for both involve the same 3 processes dictated by the UPI concept, namely formation or shape, U, the plant's relation to itself, qua root, stem, branch, leaf, bud, blossom. Assimilation, P, the plant's relation to the object, other, the terrestrial organism, qua soil, water, light, air. And reproduction, or the genus process, I, the plant's production of another individual like itself. Second, that the plant organism is only a formal and not a concrete or actual subject, since it is made up of parts, not members, as is the case with the animal organism. With the plant, there is no single subject or unity, but only a collection of individuals, an infinite number of subjects, i.e., any part of the plant can reproduce the entire plant. As Hegel says, quote, a plant is an aggregate of a group of individuals which form a single individual, but one whose parts are completely self-subsistent. The animal, on the contrary, has viscera, members which are not self-subsistent and can only exist in unity with the whole, end quote. Hence, the difference of the plant's parts is only superficial, and, quote, one part can easily assume the function of the other, end quote, which is not possible with the animal. For example, quote, interesting, trees have been planted upside down, the roots up in the air, and the branches and twigs in the ground, with the result that the roots push out leaves, buds, and blossoms, and the branches have become roots, end quote. Very interesting. Third, that the plant organism, in contrast to animals, is asexual and does not have sex or reproduce via sex, which requires two separate male and female individuals. Although, Hegel notes, there are some plants, the dioecia, e.g. palms and hemp, where the separate sexes are found in two separate and distinct plants. Nonetheless, the plant is asexual, quote, because nevertheless the sexual parts form a closed circle. For on one side of the same plant, we have filaments and anthers as male sexual parts, and on the other, seed, bud, and pistil as female sexual parts, end quote. And even where there is, quote, the production of a new individual through the union of the two sexes, as in the Chamaerops humilis plant in Berlin in 1767, it is to be regarded only as a play, a luxury, a superfluity for propagation. Fertilization by sexual union is not necessary, since the plant is already fertilized on its own account, even without being touched by another plant, end quote. Now, as concerns the animal organism, the concrete and true subject, we have the same three processes as the plant, but in their perfection. Shape, U, assimilation, P, and the genus process or sex relation, I. Important is Hegel's statement that the animal, the realized concept, sums up all of nature. Quote, the animal organism is the microcosm, the center of nature, the macrocosm, which has achieved an existence for itself in which the whole of inorganic nature is recapitulated and idealized, end quote. This means that, for example, the human body contains and exemplifies within itself all the characteristics, elements, or moments pertaining to both mechanics and physics. For example, space, time, gravity, water, air, cohesion, heat, magnetism, electricity, and chemistry. Now, there are 4 points. 1. Each moment of the concept, UPI, makes itself into a complete syllogism, Schluss, or close in German, and is the totality, or contains the others in itself. The syllogism, or close, is the unity of opposites. Therefore, in the case of shape, U, the animal organism relates to itself or closes with itself through regeneration or consuming itself. The concept as soul closes or unites with its object, its body. In assimilation, P, the organism relates to an other, external inorganic nature, or closes with an other, such as nutriment, which it converts into itself, into animality, a prime example of absolute negativity. In the genus process, I, which is the unity of the first two, of self-relation and relation to other, the organism closes with itself through copulation or union with another that is itself, its own kind. The result, which is also the result of nature as a whole, is both, 1, a new individual, the same as itself, and the preservation of the species, and 2, the death or negation of the individual, which is at once the realization of the genus or universal as thought, and the transition to spirit or mind, I, the last and highest sphere of realities or God's self-actualization. 2. First, let's consider shape, U, whose moments are the functions of the organism, the systems of shape, and the total structure. The organism's functions are sensibility, the universal, where the one universal soul is everywhere present and feels in all parts of its body. Irritability, the particular, which is receptivity to external stimulation and reaction to it. And reproduction, the individual I, whereby the organism constantly renews itself as an individual. These 3 functions have their reality in 3 systems, systems of shape, and anatomical centers, the total structure, and which centers are the same in all animals, from insect to man: head, thorax, abdomen. Sensibility has its reality in the nervous system, and its center in the head, the brain. Irritability has its reality in the circulatory system, and its center in the thorax, the heart, of which, and of the blood, Hegel observes that, quote, the blood is not moved, as our own physiologists think, but rather is motion itself. This is the unity of opposites, the immovable which yet moves. The blood is the subject, which no less than the will initiates movement, end quote. And reproduction has its reality in the digestive system and its center in the abdomen or the intestines. The total structure, the unity of the other 2, is the process whereby the organism preserves itself by consuming itself. Each member, organ, consumes all the others, hence is end, and in turn is consumed by them, is also means. In this way, the life of the whole organism is maintained. In other words, the organism lives on itself and produces its own self. And the result of the process is self-feeling, which is absent in plants. In Hegel's words, quote, "The immediate idea is life. The concept is realized as soul in a body. The soul is the immediate, self-relating universality of the body's externality. The soul is equally the particularizing of the body, so that the body expresses no distinctions in itself other than the determinations of the concept. And finally, the soul is individuality as infinite negativity, the dialectic of the body's scattered objectivity, which is led back into subjectivity from the semblance of independent existence." End quote. 3. Now let's consider assimilation, P, whose moments are the theoretical process and the practical relationship. In the assimilation process, the animal relates to another, the world. And this is because in shape, we ended with the self-feeling of the individual, which is exclusive of non-organic nature. And this creates a tension, which has two forms. A theoretical or ideal tension, as the object is not altered, and a practical or real tension, as the object is altered. As Hegel says, quote, "The only destiny of the outer is to be for the organism, and the organism is that which preserves itself in face of the outer world. The organism must posit what is external as subjective, appropriate it, and identify it with itself. And this is assimilation." End quote. Now, the theoretical or ideal process involves the senses and sensing the object, in which the object is, quote, "made mine in an ideal way." The five senses correlate with the UPI concept and its four elements. The universal, sight, light and color, and hearing, sound. The particular, smell, air, and taste, water. And the individual, feeling, earth, and hardness. Hegel notes here that, quote, "The sentient creature contains a relation to another which is immediately posited as mine. The object, which is hard, warm, etc., exists independently outside of me. But equally, when it is sensed, it is immediately transformed, made ideal, a determinacy of my feeling." End quote. Now, the practical or real relationship involves the feeling of a lack, such as hunger, followed by the assimilation of the object or other, food, and, quote, "making it into yourself," thereby altering or destroying the object. Now, in passing, Hegel makes a profound observation. He says, quote, "It is a privilege of higher natures to feel pain. The higher the nature, the more unhappiness it feels. The great man has a great need and the urge to rid himself of it. Great deeds come only from profound mental suffering. And here may be found the solution to the problem of evil." End quote. 4. Finally, we'll consider the genus process or sex relation, I, which has three parts or processes: the sex relation, the genus and species, and the genus and the individual, and which correlate with three types of death, death by copulation, by violence, and by disease, all three of which have to do with the contradiction in nature between the genus, or universal or concept, and the individual. 1. The sex relation, whereby a new individual of the same species is produced, thus keeping the species, the genus, the universal, in existence. It can be understood via the concept's unity of opposites feature. First, what motivates two male and female, absolutely unique individuals to mate and physically become one is their identity. The fact that, e.g., they are both human or are of the same genus or species. As we now know, the genus, universal or concept, is the truth and sole reality, and hence must exist. It is the genus that is behind the sex drive in animals and the necessity that it be realized and exist in unitary form, that it not just exist in two separated individuals. The genus wants to exist as pure genus, as one genus, as genus in its own right. Thus the extremes, male and female, are the opposites, and their coming together as one is their unity, i.e. the concept as the unity of opposites. Also, the male and female as such are separate, hence one-sided or half and not whole, and wish to come together in order to cancel their one-sidedness and become complete, or unities of male-female. Cf. the Jedi androgen. As Hegel sums it up, quote, the universality of the genus, the identity of individuals, is distinct from their particular individuality. The individual is only one of two and does not exist as unity, but only as a singular. The activity of the animal is to cancel this difference, end quote. As concerns death, in many cases, cf. spiders, after sex or copulation, the male of the species dies. 2. Genus and species. The genus, or universal, e.g. animal, must particularize itself into species, dog, horse, human, etc., which must then manifest as individuals. And man is the universal type of animal from which all the different forms and classes of animals can alone be explained. Further, the biological sciences, genus, species, individual, classification scheme correlates directly with the concepts universal, particular, individual structure. Also, all animals can be classified into vertebrates or invertebrates, and also into land animals, birds, or fish, in correspondence with the elements earth, air, and water. As concerns death, when one species, a jaguar, devours another, an antelope, we have a violent death. 3. The genus and the individual. It has 3 parts: the disease of the individual, therapy, and the self-induced destruction of the individual. As concerns the disease of the individual, disease is a function of particularity, while health is a function of universality. Disease occurs when one of an organism's systems or organs sets itself up in isolation and persists in its particular activity against the activity of the whole, whose fluidity is thereby obstructed. And this is why the restoration of health consists only in the overcoming of this particularization. Thus, an organism is in a state of health when all its systems or organs are in a state of fluidity or oneness with each other and the whole, or are in a state of universality in which no part of the whole is uncooperative or tries to become independent from the whole, which occurs, for example, in cancer. Now, as regards therapy, there are three types of cures or remedies of disease. The fortifying remedy, a positive irritant or poison, which excites the activity of the organism. The debilitating remedy, a negative irritant, like fasting, which depresses the activity of the organism. And the, quote, Jedi remedy, magnetism, hypnosis, laying on of hands, faith, meditation, affirmation, etc., which involves a deep immersion in the absolute I, the inner, the identity or universality of the organism, and activates the inner physician and immune system. As concerns medicine, according to Hegel, the way it works and cures a disease is that it is an indigestible substance which causes the body to rally all its forces in order to cast out the substance, which at the same time casts out the disease. Lastly, we have the self-induced destruction of the individual, the most important section of Hegel's Science of Nature. It is here that we make the transition from death, the negation of the immediate natural individual, to spirit and immortality, i.e., to thought, the fully actualized genus or universal, and the concept that exists for itself in its own right. As Hegel says, quote, the organism can recover from disease, but disease is in its very nature. And herein lies the necessity of death. End quote. Simply put, the reason why the natural individual organism must die is, as noted, because of the contradiction between the genus, universal, and the individual. As we said, the genus, the concept, or the point, is all that exists. But as it exists in the individual, it is inadequate and insufficient. It does not yet exist in its own right, or as such. What we also witness in this transition is the total overcoming of externality, matter, and nature itself. And this occurs with the appearance of the soul. Simply put, we began the science of nature with space, or sheer externality, where all points existed outside all other points, no two points coinciding. And we end the science of nature with the soul, where all points coincide. For example, the same soul in my right index finger is the same soul in my left index finger, etc. Hence, all externality has been overcome. Indeed, as Hegel says, with spirit, the soul, as the truth of nature, quote, nature has vanished, end quote. The soul, in fact, is the universal immateriality of matter, the truth that matter has no truth. In conclusion, Hegel observes that, quote, thought as this universal which exists for itself is immortal being, Mortal being is that in which the idea, the universal, exists in an inadequate form. And this is the transition from nature to spirit. In the living being, nature finds its consummation and has made its peace, in that it is transformed into a higher existence. Spirit has thus proceeded from nature. The goal of nature is to destroy itself and to break through its husk of immediate sensuous existence, to consume itself like the phoenix in order to come forth from this externality rejuvenated as spirit. End quote. In the fall semester, we shall be taking up the study of Hegel's Science of Spirit. Thank you.